The Shepnaz podcast begins now.
You're listening to the Shepnaz podcast, a podcast at Shepherd Church. Everything we do here is to connect our community in a meaningful relationship with Christ, and we're expecting great things. My name's Joey. I get to be the host of this podcast, and today I am joined by Pastor Ashley Kuhn, the community chaplain here at Shepherd Church. We are so glad to have her. We're going to be recapping and kind of taking a deeper dive into her sermon from this past Sunday. So, Pastor Ashley, welcome in.
Hey, thanks. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. This is your first appearance on the podcast in quite some time, and it feels like my first appearance on the podcast for quite some time, too.
It does. It does feel that way.
It's been a while, but we're glad to have you in.
It's good to be here.
You've had a lot of things happen since the last time you were on the podcast and talking to everybody. And one of those things was you got to take a sabbatical.
I did take a sabbatical. It was amazing. I got to travel different places and rest and learn and grow and just prepare myself for this new job.
And then you came back and you started a completely different role.
Yes.
And how's that going?
Really good. It's been about a month and a half now that I've been back, and it has been game-changing. We've had a whole bunch of kiddos accept Christ last week at our Power of Prayer week. The kids got to go to all different prayer stations all day, every day for 5 days.
Man.
And they were loving it.
And are we going to talk about the job in a little bit? Or
in a little bit, yeah. We'll dive in a little bit more.
We're not going to spoil the rest of the episode.
No spoiler alerts.
But we want to dive into that and just talk about it. Just keep reminding people that you're still on the team.
I am. I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still here.
Still kicking.
Yeah, and we're really excited about it. So today we're going to kind of take a deeper dive and talk about the sermon from this past Sunday that you got to bring to God's people. You taught on the feeding of the 5,000 from the book of Mark. Right. So you just want to jump in and kind of recap what we talked about. And then
one of my favorite YouTube series for kids. They will tell a Bible story and then they'll say, in case you missed it, here's the quick version.
Yeah.
And I love that. So in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Other than the resurrection, because obviously that's a ginormous miracle and everybody talked about it. Other than that, this is the only miracle that happened in all of the Gospels. All of the Gospels record it. They all have it in different ways, different kind of details, but the main point is still the same for all of them.
Yeah.
And they all have three main characters: the boy who shared his lunch, the disciples, and Jesus. And during the sermon, we talked about how each of those different people responded differently to the situation, and that God called them to be a part of the miracle in a different way. So the boy, he was a part of the crowd. He was a sheep without a shepherd, and the whole crowd there, they were in need of something, and it was a lot more than just bread and fish.
Sure.
They needed a lot more than just lunch. They needed a savior. And they didn't quite know that yet, but as they were there and they learned more, they found that God has provided them for a path to eternal salvation, and all that they have to do is accept it. It's a pretty amazing thing. And then there was the disciples. They were in the story as well, and they got to be a part of the miracle. And they had actually just come from being a part of lots of different miracles where Jesus had sent them out and said, I want you to go and don't take anything with you. Just go and do all these things, heal people. They came back, though, and they had a lot of questions. They were like, I don't know how we're going to feed this many people, but they had faith, but they were still growing. And then there's Jesus. Jesus had just come back from hearing that his cousin had died, and he was distraught. He was exhausted. He was overwhelmed and overworked and needed rest. But when he saw the people, he had love for them, and he did not pour from an empty cup. It felt like he had an empty cup, because he had nothing left to give, but he was being sourced by the Father. So there, as he was pouring out, God was pouring in. Yeah. So that was the quick version.
Yeah. And you had the task of being asked to preach and to keep it to,
keep it short.
Yeah, 15 minutes or whatever. And so there's obviously, I'm sure, lots of things that didn't quite make it into the 15-minute version. So is there if you were to here's some things that I wish we could have got into to talk about, because this is really important stuff and a lot of things that meaning for our lives today. Like, what are some things that we could take away from it that we didn't quite get to on Sunday?
Yeah, I would love to like just take a deeper dive into those characters because I relate so much to each of them. So like just pick one of the characters and I'll dive in.
Let's talk about the boy.
The boy, the first
boy.
one. Yeah, the boy. So
Where's the boy?
actually in Mark, they don't say that it was the boy.
Sure.
But in one of the other gospels it does, and they like share more details about it. But we do know that it was the boy and that he gave his lunch. And what I found interesting is when they say this is the feeding of the 5,000, he wouldn't have even counted.
Right.
Yeah, because he wasn't an adult male. Only adult males counted. So he obviously was overlooked. And in that culture, children just weren't important. So they weren't counted. And I believe that God uses people like that.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful because I'm a person like that. I'm a person that God has chosen to use, even though I shouldn't count for anything. I'm basically nothing. But we had, I heard a district superintendent once who told a story. It's called "So Because You Never Know," and he talked about when he was a pastor at a church in Whitehall. A small little church, He was a pastor at a church in Whitehall nearby, and there was this little girl there who was really quite obnoxious. And she was always asking him questions, always had lots of Bible questions for him. She came on the church bus, and he just gave her attention, even though he really didn't have to. Like, he's the lead pastor. She should have gone to talk to her Sunday school teacher about all this crazy nonsense. Like, she desperately wanted to know why people in the Bible don't have last names. Like, this was something that kept her awake at night. But anyway, as he tells these stories about this crazy little girl, I realized he was talking about me. Yeah, that was me. I was that crazy girl. I had asked him all kinds of dumb questions all the time. I just pulled on his coat and was like, hey, I need you to tell me about this in the Bible. And like, I still look back on those times and I think, man, he gave me attention when I really didn't deserve it. He gave me time. He poured into me. And I just think what a blessing that is. Like, that's what we get to do when we're ministering to this next generation, right?
Yep. And you pick the people, like you said, that are overlooked. And in the Gospels, it also makes a distinction that they were barley loaves, which was the bread of poor people. Yeah, it's the bread that they ate. Like, people who had wealth, or not even wealth, but were just doing okay. They didn't eat barley. Right. They ate better stuff, and it was even likely that was the food for the week for the family. Yeah. And he just offered it up.
He was willing to give it all.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah. The faith of a child.
Yeah.
It's that time of year again. We're getting ready for the church-wide picnic. It will start at 4 p.m. on Sunday, August 6th. Come prepared for some group games with maybe some water balloons or an egg toss. Try your hand at cornhole and a little mingle bingo. Oh yeah, there will be prizes. We're giving away a $75 gift card to the new eatery in Johnstown, Ghost Rider Public House. Also, a $50 gift card to Witt's and $25 to Troyer's. This church-wide picnic is getting a little wider this year because we're all packing up and heading to Lenley Hannah's Memorial Park in Johnstown. We're planning to sing a couple worship songs, officially install Nick Shaner as the Johnstown campus pastor, and welcome several new members into the Shepherd family. I almost forgot. There'll be food at this picnic too. The church will supply burgers, hot dogs, and bottled water, but we need your help for the rest. If your last name starts with A through M, we're asking that you bring a salad or side dish. N through Z, you have the important task of bringing desserts. Mark your calendars now. Church-wide picnic, August 6th at 4 p.m. at Lenley Hannah's Memorial Park in Johnstown. Don't miss it.
So that's the boy.
The boy.
So who else? Who else do you want to dive a little bit deeper into?
So the disciples, they were there too, right? And like I said, Jesus had just sent them off and said, I'm going to have you go do some more miracles on your own. I'm trusting you. You can do this. But he had told them not to take anything with them when he traveled. Do you know why that was?
I don't.
Do you have a guess? Come on. Give me a good Sunday school
They
answer.
only had pockets.
They did not have
in
pockets.
their
I like
tunics.
that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was because he wanted to teach them something, as
Yeah.
he does. He wanted to teach them that they needed to rely on him. And in this story, he is talking to the disciples, but specifically to Philip. And he says, Philip, where can I go and buy bread for this many people? Like, it's getting late. Where can I go? Where's the nearest grocery store? Because he's from the area. Maybe
Right.
he knows.
Philip knew where.
Yeah. But Philip, he wasn't thinking about the question correctly. And he was thinking more of like, how?
Yeah.
How could we possibly pay for this many people to eat? And he was so into like all the details that he forgot who Jesus was for a
Right.
second. Like, you just saw him do so many miracles, and he even did miracles through you. How could he not just provide you some bread if you just told him? He's just asking you a question for a reason, because he was testing him, because that's what Jesus does sometimes. He
That's what a
asks
good
you
rabbi
questions.
does.
He asks you questions to help you learn something. So he wanted the disciples to trust him and to know that God alone was able to provide for their needs. And I definitely relate to this character too.
Yeah.
We just had an experience, our family, about our boys going to Marburn Academy. They go there because they have some special needs. They have dyslexia and ADHD and things like that Marburn is able to help them with. But that school is wicked expensive. Like, more than I make in a year is what their tuition is. So this year it increased,
As
inflation
everything does.
inflation had happened. So the price increased, and we got the contract from the school, and they needed us to sign it saying that we were going to send the kids back next year. And my husband and I looked over it and we said, no, there's no possible way. We can't afford it. We weren't getting as much tuition, reimbursement, things like that as we had in the past. So we're like, I just don't know how it will work. But I felt like God was calling us to just sign it with confidence, knowing he can do all things. He's in charge of everything. So we signed it back, I think, in March or something. We signed that contract. And over the summer, I was in the car with my boys, and I got a call from the CFO of Marburn. And the CFO said, hey, I wanted to let you know that there was a private donor who came through and said that they wanted to donate a scholarship for one child in all of Marburn. Marburn's like a second grade through high school school. So there's lots and lots of children, but they chose Joshie. And so Joshie's being taken care of.
Wow.
And then just a few weeks ago, we got an email from the head of school that the state of Ohio voted, and there's more money now in the John Peterson Scholarship, which is for children who have special needs. And so now over 3/4 of our tuition is going to be covered.
Wow.
God has provided in such an amazing, miraculous way, but I had to be willing to sign the contract first. And
You had to step out in
just how the
faith.
disciples did, right? They had to walk out there with that little bit of food in front of 5,000 men and a billion of children, and everybody's hungry. It would have been embarrassing if
Probably
they had walked out.
Getting cranky, getting made fun of. Like, what's that going to do?
Right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you think, like, in that culture, it was a sin if you weren't hospitable to people. So if they would come with an empty plate to you, that would be a sin. That'd be looked upon as like, you're supposed to be a Jesus follower? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So I just think that's amazing how God can provide.
And you have Jesus,
Of
another
course.
character in
Jesus,
the story.
he's kind of an important character
Yeah.
in the story, right?
Absolutely.
So, like I said, he had just found out that his cousin had passed away. His bestie, the person who's out telling everybody in the world about him. He had just died.
And that's John the Baptist.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he's not. He did not die of old age.
No, it
No.
was not a good thing.
No, the king had him killed, and so Jesus was also a little bit afraid that it could happen to him too. So he's not only mourning, but he's in fear, and he's worried about his disciples, these guys that trust him, and they're exhausted. They've been traveling, and I'm sure he was just at the end of his rope, like human-wise, because he is fully God and fully man.
Yeah.
So he had nothing left to give.
He had the emotions and the temperament sometimes of a human.
Right. So when he got to this place, they were like, okay, let's just go spend some time alone to rest and to pray and not have to think about anything for a minute. But that's not what happened. All the people came rushing to see him because it's Jesus. And they were excited. They wanted to see a show. They wanted to see him do some kind of crazy miracle. And so they were not there for the best of reasons, but Jesus had compassion on them, and he saw through to their heart. And the verse that's in here, in Mark, says that he saw that they were like sheep without a shepherd.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that, Joey?
Yeah. I believe that has been kind of a mantra for you for about a year now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's how I was feeling like I was being called to this new position of being a chaplain. And about like the winter time of last year when we had our school having a concert and the daycare was releasing all their kids at 6 p.m. and there was basketball happening at the same time. There were so many people coming in and out these doors, and I just felt like God kept saying, these are sheep without a shepherd. And now I'm getting to live my calling, and I'm just so excited. Like every day I wake up and I'm pumped.
Yeah.
So excited to be able to speak into the lives of these kiddos.
Yeah.
I had, like these kids that are here right now during summer camp some of them are only here for the summer.
Yeah, for the 3 months.
And it's just like this limited window we have into their lives that we get to speak into their lives. And it's just been amazing to see how much they've grown just in these few weeks of me getting to know them. I had a little girl recently that I was talking to. We were diving deep into one of the songs that we were singing, and in the song it says that he leaves the 99. And I said, what do you guys think that means? He leaves the 99. And she was so incredibly serious. She raised her hand and she said, I think Jesus wants us to leave the 90s behind. He does not want us to be in the 90s anymore.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of jokes we could make about that.
There's a lot we could say about that. Mom jeans,
but that's cute.
Let them go. We don't need them anymore. Leave the 99s. No. And then we got to talk about how Jesus really did leave the 99. He's the good shepherd. He cares for us individually, and he loves each of us, and how much he rejoices when we come to know him. And we had 25 kids that day accept Christ.
It's amazing.
So cool just to be a part of that, to be the vessel that God uses for that.
It's amazing.
It's been good.
Yeah. So what else, is there anything else that you'd like to do to talk about this, or do you want to wrap up in any certain way?
Maybe we could pray together.
Okay.
Because I see myself in all three of these roles.
Yeah,
maybe
I hear you.
Maybe you see yourself in one more than the other, or maybe you're like me and you have crazy personality and you have all three going on at once.
And pastors use you as sermon illustrations.
Yes, exactly. This crazy little child that won't leave me alone. Yes. So maybe we could just close in prayer. All right.
Please do.
Dear Lord, I know that we can relate to one or more of these characters in this story. God, I know that so many of us are like the boy in this story. We are a sheep without a shepherd. We're someone that everyone else overlooks. But God, you chose that boy to participate in a miracle. And I know that you choose us. You choose all kinds of people to do your work. You often use those who are the weakest or the least important to show your glory. God, I know that you are calling me. And Lord, sometimes I can allow doubt to creep in and think that I'm a nothing. But I know that I am capable because I am equipped by you. Father God, some of us relate more to the disciples. They've been following you for a while, and they know what you've been calling them to do, but they just don't see how yet. They don't know how you plan on doing this big thing, but they have to trust you. They have to take that step and by faith say, I want to be a vessel that you use. Maybe some of us relate more with Jesus, that they're at a place of hurt or exhaustion or just brokenness, and they're just in desperate need of God's strength to pour through us. Lord, I pray that you will fill us as we fill others. I thank you that all of your word points to you and points to who you are. God, I thank you that it is meaningful and relevant even still today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Shepnaz podcast. If something in today's podcast has spurred you to take your next step in your faith journey, you can let us know by emailing podcast@shepnaz.org. We would love to support you in prayer and with some resources to help you along your journey. In tomorrow's episode, Pastor Joey will be talking with Pastor Rob about church updates that he discussed this past Sunday. We've had a lot going on at Shepherd because God has been moving in many ways. Join us tomorrow to hear more. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. God bless and have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.